Alright, so these are my Week 8 UFL power rankings. Let's get started. Starting off with our top performances, you guys can mostly look at this yourself. I'll go over some of the quarterbacks. Tiami was really good this game, very efficient, 278 yards and 3 touchdowns. Kevin Hogan was solid with 230 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bit of a fumble, but he was still pretty good. Bryce Perkins was good as always, although he did have a pretty poor completion percentage at only 15 of 28. Lou Perez had over 300 yards with 2 touchdowns. Jalen McClendon was decent here, 167 yards and a touchdown. Case Cookis was good, nearly 200 yards and a touchdown, but he did have very poor completion percentage. Max Dugan was solid. He did have an interception in this game. They had over 200 total yards with 2 touchdowns. The Dresser win was decent as well, over 200 total yards and a touchdown. Starting off here at number 8 is going to be our Memphis Showboats. So the Showboats had a bad week this week. Ended up losing 19-9 versus the St. Louis Battlehawks. They actually outgained the Battlehawks by 16 yards, but they just couldn't put the ball in the end zone, right? 9 points in this game is not good. Defensively, only allowing 19 is decent, right? And again, Dresser Wynn played solid in this game. He wasn't great, but he was solid. But their team could only manage 9 points. Not a very good sign for Memphis. Number 7 is going to be San Antonio Brahmas, jumping ahead of the Memphis Showboats. Those two teams actually play this week, so that should be a very interesting game for all the wrong reasons. But the Brahmas had an 8-point loss versus the DC Defenders, 32-24. And they actually outgained the Defenders by 5 yards, but they did have 2 turnovers to 1 takeaway. So obviously losing the turnover battle makes a pretty big difference in an 8-point game. But they did do really good offensively, right? 350 yards, 24 points, one of their best offensive performances of the season. Kevin Hogan was pretty good this game as well. They also signed running back Jaden Shryden, who was on Michigan's roster earlier, and he's actually been decent. So maybe that can also boost their offense here a little bit. But overall, Browns are still not a very good team. Number 6 is the Houston Roughnecks at 3-4. They're going to drop 1 spot here. They were up 25-6 or 24-5 at halftime against the Michigan Panthers, and they ended up losing this game. Against the Birmingham Stallions. They were up 25-6 against the Birmingham Stallions, and they ended up losing this game 33-25. 27 unanswered points in the last 35 minutes of this game. Not a good look for Houston. They needed this win to stay alive in the USFL playoff race, but now they're pretty much screwed. They got outgained by 170 yards. Not ideal. First half was amazing. Second half was an utter disaster, right? Jalen McClendon was still fine in this game, but again, defensively allowing 33 points overall, not very good. Number 5 is going to be the Arlington Renegades. They had a 25-24 loss versus the Michigan Panthers. They actually outgained them by 5 yards, and they had 2 takeaways to 0 turnovers, right? So they had more yards. They won the turnover battle, but they still ended up losing this game, mostly because they could not get the ball in the end zone. They had 4 field goals in this game, right? They were moving the ball down the field, doing fine, but they just finished with too many field goals, and then defensively they could not stop Michigan late in this game. So they are going to jump ahead 1 spot here, even though they did end up losing. But they lost by 1 point to a really good Michigan Panthers team. Number 4 is going to be the Birmingham Stallions. They're going to stay at the same spot. They had a great comeback win against the Roughnecks, right? They won 33-25 after being down 25-6. Great job there. Case Cookis was really good in this game. When he got injured late, Jamar Smith came in and was actually doing pretty good. He led the game-winning drive. They also had a takeaway here late in that game to really help him out quite a bit. But I'm still a little bit questionable because I don't know what the quarterback situation looks like. Case Cookis did not practice on Tuesday, right? I don't know about the Wednesday injury report, but if Case Cookis is not playing, it looks like Jamar Smith is going to be slated to start. Alex McGee is off the IR, but he's on the inactive list for this week. So we still have a lot of quarterback questions, specifically for Week 8. Number 3 is going to be the DC Defenders. So they had a good game, 32-24 win versus the Brahmas, but it was only an 8-point win against what was the worst team in the league, right, the San Antonio Brahmas, and they let them score 24 points. Not great. They also lost the yardage battle. Not great. They did have 2 takeaways defensively, so that was obviously good for them. And offensively, again, putting up 32 points, they were doing really good. And Jordan Tiamu had maybe his best game of the season. So things are definitely looking good in DC, but I just can't move them up right now. Number 2 is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks. So they had a good win against the Memphis Showboats, 19-9. They did get outgained in yardage, but again, defensively, they've been amazing pretty much all season long. And this week was another amazing performance, allowing only 9 points, under 300 yards. They had a takeaway, right? Everything you want to see defensively is going good for St. Louis. Offensively, still some struggles. They did not break 20 points. They did not break 300 yards, and they had a turnover. But Max Dugan was better this week than he was in Week 7, so that's a good sign. I feel like we're starting to see more consistency with the receivers in this Battlehawks team. So hopefully, a couple more weeks before the playoffs, they can really get their top receivers narrowed down and be a legit pass threat come postseason. Number 1 is going to be the Michigan Panthers, of course. They were number 1 a week ago, and they won this week. In a really good game, 25-24 versus the Arlington Renegades. They had a last-minute touchdown, a last-second touchdown, actually, with a game-winning 1-point conversion. So really, really good, really fun game here, right? They did get outgained in yardage, like I mentioned earlier, and they had 2 turnovers and 0 takeaways. But they still managed to get the win. So that's obviously really good for Michigan. That everything from the box score here shows they should have lost, but they actually end up winning. One thing to note is that they did lose linebacker Frank Ginda to IR. He's one of the best linebackers in this league a year ago. That's obviously going to hurt them a little bit. But they also did get Matt Colburn back at running back, and then they ended up cutting Jaden Shryden in the process. So looking at our standings here, they are mirroring each other. So we got the Defenders and Battlehawks at 5-2, Renegades at 3-4, and Brahmas at 1-6. And in the USFL, we got the Stallions and Panthers at 5-2, with the Roughnecks at 3-4, and the Showboats at 1-6. Brahmas and Showboats, I believe, are officially eliminated from playoffs. And then we have the Renegades and Roughnecks, who are going to be very close to be eliminated. Could be potentially eliminated in Week 8, if I'm not mistaken. But moving on from there, we're going to go to our quarterback power ranking. So this is, not a whole lot of movement, right? As you can see, the top 9 guys here. The top 3 guys, Perkins, Tiamu, and Perez, stay the same. We see Dresser Wynn and Jalen McClendon jump ahead of Manny Wilkins. I think they're doing pretty good. It's just getting that extra game helps me to really solidify them above Manny Wilkins. But then we got the rest of these guys. Henderson, Corral, Cookus, and Dugan all staying at the same spot. Kevin Hogan actually jumps up a couple of spots, though, ahead of Troy Williams and Andrew Peasley. He looked really good in this game. Troy Williams drops 1 spot, like I mentioned. Jamar Smith had 1 really good drive here, so he's going to slot in at 13, just above Andrew Peasley. Then you got a bunch of other guys dropping 1 spot there just because, Jamar Smith jumped ahead of him. And then we got Mike DeLillo coming in at number 20, who had his first pass in this game and completed it. So I'm going to put him ahead of Colton Allers and Jared Gorentano because of that. But that's going to be it for that. Looking at our attendance here, not great numbers. DC and San Antonio had just under 10K, where San Antonio's average this year was 14,000, but that was just 1 game, and that was their home opener. Right, so seeing them around that 10K mark is a good sign for San Antonio. Michigan and Arlington right under that 10K mark as well is actually above their average. That's good to see there. But the Roughnecks and Stallions game at 4,700 is atrocious. That is less than half of their season average this year. Not a good look at all for Birmingham. And then Memphis had 4,200, which is below their average as well, but not by a whole lot. That's about what you expect to see. But also, both those games were on Mother's Day, so I would imagine that has something to do with the very poor attendance in Birmingham. But Memphis doesn't really have an excuse because they've been putting up low numbers all season long. And then we're going to look at our TV viewership. So, we have some mixed numbers here, like usual. DC and San Antonio had 540,000 on Fox, which is about 100,000 less than the Friday night Fox average, but still not horrible, just not exactly where you want it to be. And then Michigan and Arlington at 596,000 on Fox on Saturday. It's just 40,000 less than their average, so not horrible there. And then the Roughnecks and Birmingham game had 956,000 on ABC. Over 100,000 above ABC average, the second most viewed game this season across all of UFL. So that is a very, very good number. Then we got St. Louis and Memphis, which had only 233,000 on ESPN, which is less than half of ESPN's average. And that is the lowest viewed UFL game this year. So we had one of the highest viewed games, and we had the lowest viewed game in the same week. It's really just jarring to see how poor the UFL performs on ESPN when it performs amazing on ABC when it's basically the same broadcast running. It just depends what channel you're going to actually air it on. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check back next week for an updated power rankings list, and goodbye.